Many of you are mentioning the mistakes, the issues, the problems that you have with kettlebell training. And it mostly boils down into 3 exercises that you're having issues with: the swing, the clean, as well as in the snatch. And 90% of the mistakes you are making can be corrected with a few simple tips that I'm going to share in this video. And if you're over 40 and you want to become strong, fit and lean without going to the gym twice as fast, download our free ebook in the first link in the description. Grüezi miteinander, Gregory von Lebe Stark hier. The mistakes that you are making can be summarized into 6 big issues that you are having, and we're going to cover these in this video. But before we get started, I have to put up a disclaimer. Number 1, watching videos is awesome, but getting coaching from a master cannot be replaced. Working with another human being one-on-one is just one of the best ways to understand how kettlebells, and matter of fact, any type of training or system that requires skill, can be mastered. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for my sensei, Steve Carter, rest in peace, who visited us in 2019 and gave me the building blocks that I use now today to become a lean, mean kettlebell machine and to also understand what kettlebell training is all about. Number 2, even if you have all the information, it is absolutely worthless if you don't put in the work. They say knowledge is power. I disagree. Applied knowledge is power. So once you know all the important things there is to know about kettlebell training, you have to put in the work. I've gotten to where I am because I've invested thousands and thousands and thousands of reps into these exercises. Mistake number 1, tightness. You know what Bruce Lee said? You have to become like water. You have to understand when to contract and you have to understand when to relax. I was just like this. If you have a typical CrossFit, bodybuilding, weightlifting, whatever type of background, then you have been taught to keep everything tight. And tension is good. But with kettlebells, we have to understand how to get loose a little bit. And this takes a lot of time. For example, a solid rack position doesn't look like this. It looks like this. Thoracic flexion of the T-spine, relaxing the bell on my body, and from this position, I can put in the work. Mistake number 2, arm dominance. And this can be seen in the swing, the clean, as well as in the snatch. Since we are handsy creatures, we think that we have to move everything with our arms and our hands. But with kettlebells, the hands become a side product. And the main character is the hip, the midsection. So the major mistake in the swing that can be seen is this. The major mistake in the clean is this. And the major mistake in the snatch is this. And if you paid close attention, you've probably seen that my hip is not moving at all. So we have to understand how to get rid of tension again, but understand that we need some explosive punch from the hips. So if I understand that I still have to keep my arms tight once I reach the backswing portion, in the swing, the clean, as well as in the snatch, because then I'm loading the catapult. But otherwise I have to be loose. This is where the key is. So a swing is not supposed to look like this, but like this. The hip is moving. I keep the arm loose. And the same happens once I understand this movement pattern. The same happens then in these 3 powerful exercises that many beginners have issues with. Mistake number 3 is hipotence. Hip impotence. And it's closely related to moving everything with your hands. So once you understand this cue to keep the arms loose, but understand when to build up some tension when we reach the backswing portion. You then have to understand how to apply force to the strongest muscles of your body. And you can do this by simply learning how to hinge. And once you reach the top position, here's the key. You want to crush grapes. Push the floor away. And once you reach that top position, we have to apply the brakes in front so that we don't hyperextend the spine. Once you understand the hinge, you can learn this with a deadlift. And always think about this crushing grapes cue. It's all about pushing the floor down. And this is where physics come into play. If I imagine I want to push myself down, then the weights come up. And so then all of a sudden you understand that the swing doesn't stop here, but it stops here. Full extension of your hip joint. Mistake number 4. Crash landings. You have to understand that you're not supposed to grab the kettlebell like a dumbbell, because the kettlebell, from its dynamics and the way it's built, requires a different way to engage with it. But of course, we apply what we know to things that we don't know. That's why we need to learn a new skill and do some reprogramming. This is what the kettlebell is supposed to be like on your wrist. We call this a hand insertion. So as you can see now, the kettlebell hangs diagonally down towards the floor. The handle is up and the bell points down, and I have no pressure on my forearm. Now, how do I get here? That's the question. We're going to cover this in a second. But understand that this is not the way to grab it. This is the way to rack the kettlebell. And once you understand this rack position, this is where everything happens. The press, the clean, and even the snatch. Everything is closely related. And just in case if you're wondering what kind of kettlebell I'm using, it's the Pro Kettlebell by my friend Nikolai Puchlov, proudly made in the USA. Check the link in the description to get your Pro Kettlebell right now. And don't forget to use our code Lebe to get 10% off your next purchase. I have a couple of videos about the hand insertion that you can check on my YouTube channel. But now let's cover the basics. We use an assisted clean so that people understand how to engage into that hand insertion to properly rack the kettlebell. So we have to eliminate momentum out of the exercise to learn that basic principle. So watch. I swing the bell up, I hold it, stop it, insert my hand, rack it. Then I pull my hand outside the handle. I gotta be fast. Catch it again, drop, catch, insert, rack, drop, here we go. And once you understand the basic movement patterns, then you move into the full clean. The next mistake is turning your hands into hamburger meat. Just like this. This happened to me while I was competing. I was doing 100 reps with the 32 kg kettlebell, hopefully achieving my master of sport in my bodyweight class. So this might happen when you compete. You have a very heavy kettlebell and you want to hit those numbers, but it's not the norm. And up here, it should always be absolutely solid. And I'm fairly happy that during my competition, this was the weak spot, but here I was totally fine. Now, if you don't understand how to do that hand insertion that we talked about, where you jump, you don't slide. If I slide here, then I always have that contact point where my hands gets torn apart, or my skin gets torn apart. So I have to know how to jump. And another important thing that you need to know is this. Once you develop calluses, you always have to file them down. Yes, calluses are part of the kettlebell game, but they're not supposed to stay and become thick, because if they become thick and you don't file them down, this is where the skin then pops open. And the final mistake, bruised shoulders. Kettlebell comes up. Even if you have a good hand insertion, this might still happen. Where the kettlebell not only crashes on your forearm in the snatch, even if you have a good hand insertion, but it also annihilates your shoulder. What we have to learn is to stop the flow of kinetic energy, which is strange because we need that kinetic energy. We need that catapult mechanism, that push. But once that kinetic energy is flowing, meaning the kettlebell is on its way, we have to put a stop to it by spearing it. So if I clean, I spear the kettlebell right in front of my racket. So let me go ahead and demonstrate it and exaggerate the movement. And if I put it together, putting a stop to the flow of kinetic energy means I can rack the kettlebell softly without it crushing on my forearm, on my shoulder. And this even happens with heavier weight. That technique is also possible with a 32 kg. There's more push coming from the legs, so I have enough strength in my arm to stop that flow of energy. And the same happens with the snatch, but it's a little bit more critical and a little bit more difficult because the stop of the flow of kinetic energy is supposed to happen right here. So let me go exaggerate. And Bill Esch had a great suggestion on how to learn this. He calls this the clock snatch. Watch. And it takes ages to build that solid fixation overhead, especially with a heavy kettlebell. And this is how I want to end this video. Do not be discouraged if it doesn't happen automatically all at once, or if you're still struggling. The idea is to get the information first. Then you apply that information, and then you make crucial steps to adjust that information so that your brain can engage into the proper mechanisms to adjust your muscles to do it properly. And once that mechanism is perfected, your brain is taken out of the equation, and now your muscles communicate with your spinal cord. This is the final goal. However, this takes time, and you will make a lot of mistakes along the way, but the idea is that you get a couple of them right, and you will feel it once the movement is perfect or once it is right. You'll recognize it, and then you have one good rep and 10 bad ones. And then your goal is to get 2 good reps and 9 bad ones, 3, 8, 4, 7, so on and so forth. And if you still struggle, I see this, many of you are writing this down in the comments. If you still struggle after a long time, go ahead and talk to a trainer who can show it to you. Invest that money. It's going to be worth it. Because if you want to be in the proper bloodline of solid kettlebell lifters, you have to get the knowledge from somebody who's part of that area of physical culture. Let me know how old you are. I have seen so many people over 40, 50, 60, and even 70 who are getting into kettlebells, and let me know what kind of results you're having and what the issues are. I think me as well as our community, we can help you out instantly. Here's the next thing that you have to do. Clean and press that like and subscribe button. Share with a friend who's also interested in kettlebells. And if you made it this far, download my free ebook in the first link in the description called the Kettlebell Code. If you're over 40, 50, or 60, you don't have a lot of time, but you still want to take care of your fitness, right? This is where the kettlebell comes in, and I'm going to give you a shortcut to success. So let me help you. And that ebook is 100% free. You find it in the first link in the description, as well as in the pinned comment.